My experience with mental illness began at around age 19, and the symptoms of schizophrenia started to kick in. I thought people were watching me. I thought the radio and stereo were communicating with me with messages, and I thought they were watching me to steal my comedy ideas. And it started with like small sounds and things that weren't there. And eventually it became into voices and people that would say things to me, and it would be people that I would know. And then I began to believe I was fighting government corruption, and eventually the delusions of grandeur came into play, where I thought I was a reality TV star. I had millions of dollars and no one was giving me any of the money. I'm still living like a poor person when I got millions of bucks. And it became more of like really battle hallucinations in my mind, where eventually I thought that I was fighting intergalactic battles with aliens. And I fought these battles in my mind, and I remember in my mind I sent my brother-in-law up to the spaceship with a prison lunch tray, and he conquered the whole spaceship with the lunch tray. Now that sounds kind of nonsensical to anyone who's never experienced schizophrenia, but you'd be surprised what a slight chemical imbalance can make you believe. Now the first time I was brought to the psych ward, I was misdiagnosed and sent home. As sick as I was, hallucinating, seeing things, well, I can't remember, I saw only a few things, but most of it was auditory hallucinations. But the second time I was brought to the hospital, I was brought in by a police officer and kindly escorted, is the way I would word it. The officer stayed out of my delusions that were in my head and just dealt with reality. And he said, "Listen, son, you're not in any criminal charge trouble here, but you're going down to the hospital." He didn't involve himself into delusions, and he kept himself into reality of what he had to do. And he must have been looking at the poor, confused kid, thinking, "Uh-oh, I got to send this guy to the hospital." He probably knew more about what was going on at the time than I did. For a hallucination, it started out being like whispers, and you'd just be looking around. And eventually it became like it was people talking to you, clear as you could hear anyone else. I'd hear my friends' voices from all sides around me. It'd be a different voice every time. "Hey Kim, hey Kim, hey Kim, hey Kim." And I'd eventually be like, "What?" And the voices would just be quiet. And you know, as soon as you call them on it, they shut up. Some of them would threaten me. Some of them would insult me. Some of them would be my friends. It's really weird to understand where that comes from in you, where you have different parts of your brain arguing with itself, because they'd sway your emotions like you wouldn't believe. I remember yelling at them. I remember crying because of what the voices would say. So that's kind of what that was like. It's more real than you would think once you're experiencing it. Like, it's real to the person that experiences it. That's one of the difficult things to sort out with schizophrenia. One of the things that does not go away is the memory of being hallucinating out of your mind, knowing you weren't even close to in reality. That doesn't go away, because I look back at that memory and it's like a warning sign. Just keep your medications and try to end up keeping out of psych wards and stuff, because I don't ever want to be like that again. When you get first put in psych ward, they'll give you what I call the antipsychotic cocktail. You'll get like a mix of 4 or 5 of them in a high dose. I was put on a medication when I was in the hospital. It was a long-acting injection. There was no option not to take it, so the delusions and hallucinations went away. But this medication, the first few years after diagnosis were really hard for me, because the medication had severe side effects. It made my hands sit about chest level. My fingers would twitch like that. I would have difficulty maintaining consciousness, and I would sit there drooling from this medication. And it caused me to gain 100 pounds weight. And when you're sitting there twitching and drooling, you can't feel too good about yourself, because even though you know why and it's not your fault, you can see the people around you who are just thinking there's something severely wrong with this person. He's not even normal, not even close. Even my modern medication has a sedative effect that's listed as one of them. Even the list of the side effects on my new medication are like that long. Sleepiness was a hard side effect to overcome for me, because when you're depressed, That's what a lot of depressed people do anyway, is sleep. And when you're on medication that makes you want to sleep even more, that's what you're going to do. It's either be on medication that's going to do damage to your body, which it does, or be so out of your head that you're going to get in a traffic accident and do damage to your body. So it's really not really a choice for me. And if I didn't take them very quickly, would I be sick, hospitalized? And I think my psychiatrist, the best thing he ever said to me was, you know, I'm going to put you on these oral medications that you will have the responsibility to take, and you cannot take them. But if you do that, you're going to end up back here, and the next time it's not going to be a choice. The officer really made it kind, subtle, polite. I don't know exactly what word to use for that, but he made it as good as it was going to be, because he didn't yell at me, he didn't raise his voice. He just said, listen, son, you got to go to the hospital here. I think the guy knew he was sending me to a low point in my life, and he probably wasn't happy for what he saw if I would look back on it, if I were to have a guess. But he made it as good as it was going to be. And luckily I got in there before I got in any trouble and got well. One of the best things the officer said to me is, we're not pursuing any criminal charges here, son. You're just going to the hospital. And that was exactly what put my mind at ease. Because once it was that, it's like, well, how bad could this be? Maybe I'm just going into protective custody or something. Because in my delusions, I had believed I was dropping nuclear devices to stabilize the orbit of the planet. So I thought I was going to jail for war crimes, and they were going to keep me covered because I'm trying to save the world here, but they had to put me away somewhere where I'd be safe. That was my delusion that really helped bring me in. Strange as it was to say, my delusions matched up what the cop wanted to do, so it wasn't a problem. Non-threatening was good. Putting me in the back of the car is okay. I liked going without the cuffs though, because I had really committed no real crime that was responsible for. Plus, you know, you just judge maybe by what they're doing. If they're out in the public doing violent things and you've been called, that's a little different than the guy that's sitting in his home. But what can you do? Well, the non-threatening voice, that guy didn't raise his voice. He just stood there like in uniform, just stern, like, and he told me the way it was, that I was going to the hospital, and at the very least, I had the information that was accurate in front of me, right? Like, you're going, you need to go. I think he did the right thing by not playing around with the delusion, because if you just play around a little bit, then they'll think you have this position or that position in the delusion. And then when you say something innocent the next time, they'll take it the wrong way. And I think he did the right thing by not involving himself in the madness in here at the time. The place got cleaned up nice, but... There are a few things I would credit for enabling me to get to the state of my recovery that I'm at now. My family has been really supportive, and there's been a lot of support from the Mental Health and Recovery Clubhouse at the Creative Center Society. They got me involved in a comedy group and this partnership program, which got me out and speaking about my illness in a way that doesn't make people feel sad. It's really a success story, because for me, I've been on modern medication for about 7 years, and a lot of the side effects are gone, and I can focus on a real job and an employment, and I'm still doing the stand-up comedy. Schizophrenia is a difficult thing to accept, because it's hard to accept that you have some kind of problem with your mind and you have to take pills for it. And it took me a number of years before I stopped feeling shame about it. And the experience taught me that people may sometimes have problems that are well out of their control, that are well out of your control, and that you shouldn't be too hard to judge on these people, because they might not have control of what's happening to them. I've realized that. For me, the illness was a 3-month phase of hallucinations in my life, and now about a 12-year of recovery, of being out of the hospital, out of trouble, not in any legal problems, just a normal person that can walk up here and say hello to you guys. And like I said, there is hope, and recovery is possible.